Welcome back. Well, news today that biosecurity officials, government departments, vets and animal disease experts across Australia have joined forces to test the industry and government's detection of African swine fever is a big story. Now, the disease is harmless to humans, but it's already killed an estimated 200 million pigs worldwide, around a quarter of the world's entire pig population. A report funded by Australian Pork has found that a major outbreak in multiple locations across Australia could cost our industry up to $2 billion. The export industry of Australian pork would then immediately be shut down, and domestic sales of pork would drop by 25% in reaction. Margo Andrae is the CEO for Australian Pork. She joins me now to discuss this impact and the risk further. We were just talking in the break. I thought I understood, a lot of the sort of industry areas in agriculture from government and growing up in a farming community, but I didn't understand the scale of both the pork industry in Australia, Margo, and the risk. Take me through some of the numbers. So how big is our industry? What's the percentage of pork we have in Australia that's our own, and what's imported?
Yeah, so I guess if I start at the beginning, we're about a $5.3 billion industry that we contribute to Australia's economy. We have 3,700 producers across the country, and we employ around 36,000 people throughout rural and regional communities. So we're quite a significant industry. So a few things here. Domestically, we do have a lot of pork on the shelves, and of course most people would know us well from the Pork on Your Fork campaigns that we encourage people. We're number 2 in terms of protein consumption behind chicken. So we certainly on average have about 27 kilos of pork per person being eaten here in Australia. So a few key issues there, Peter. As you said, African swine fever is a virus that's spreading globally, and it has just been spread through the Asian countries, and the estimates are, you mentioned 200 million, they estimate by the time it goes through there'll be about 350 million pigs alone dead from the virus in China alone. And I have to be really clear, it doesn't have a vaccine, and within a week to 2 weeks, the pigs that get the virus actually die. It's an animal welfare issue. So as you said quite rightly, it is safe to eat pork. It does not impact humans, but from an animal welfare perspective, it is destroying the global pig herd. And uniquely, Australia being an island, we've managed to keep it out. But we're looking at a probably global disruption of protein of around 25% gone. So
yeah, and we know pork
disappearing.
Pork is much loved in Asian cuisine. So, happenstance means it puts us in a situation, if we can keep our pork stocks free of African swine flu, it puts us in a very good export, area, and it gives us export potential to go into the market with clean pork. But of course, no one can miss those stories of people arriving at the airport, if you can believe it, with fresh pork meat in their luggage trying to bring it into Australia. Tell me about how that risk is being managed.
Yeah, so that's been one of the scary things around the African swine fever, is that it's carried by humans. So we're actually calling on people to not bring in pork products, or not to bring in, actually if I extend it to all of agriculture, don't bring in any products. But in the last 6 months alone, we've seen over 40 tonnes of meat products coming into this country, and people are bringing it in their hand luggage, in their luggage. They're not declaring it. Customs are finding people with fresh pork, and there's been 6 incidences so far of people being sent home. So those people can't return to Australia for 3 years, but they're bringing pork products in their bags. The other big issue we've got is that people are bringing it in through the mail. So we're seeing a lot of that 42 tonnes coming in through the mail, and people are sending products here. So, which is illegal to bring fresh pork in, illegal to bring in for any genetics. So we've worked really hard over the last few decades to keep Australia clean and green. And it's actually humans that are risking our entire $5.3 billion industry. So that's a bit scary, because the virus the virus lives outside of its host. So that's the other thing, is you can transmit it onto your clothing and your footwear. So it's really important, if you've been in an African swine fever country, put it on the declaration cards and throw those shoes out. Don't bring them back in, and do not come near our domestic piggeries.
Okay, 2 quick questions before we go. I mean, the first question is, how prepared are our biosecurity officials for the fact that it could get into Australia? How quickly can we shut it down and isolate the risk in particular, abattoirs or community pork piggeries? How quickly can we do that? Have we been practicing what we need to do?
Yeah, so if you'd asked me a couple of months ago, I would have said we're not prepared, but through the work of the government, the state governments and industry, we're in a much better position. So everybody on farms practicing really strict biosecurity, and we're going so far as no ham sandwiches on the farm in case it is infected. We've got the borders being protected, and as I said, when you've got fined 42 tonnes in the last 6 months, of which almost 50% had fragments of African swine fever in it. So it's a very scary risk. So we did our exercise to be prepared. We are quite prepared for it, but the most important thing is we need to keep it out. So to protect our industry, we need to keep it out. So that's what we're asking people to help us do.
And it's getting into Christmas, and I know people are thinking about what goes on the table. I had heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that if the pork has a bone in it, if pork meat has a bone in it, you can be absolutely sure it's Australian pork. Is that right?
It's very easy to remember. If it has a bone, it's one of our own. So as long as it has a bone in it, you can guarantee.
Not that it affects humans anyway. I don't want people to walk away from pork. It's a big part of Christmas and everything. So anyway, we've got that covered though. If it's got a bone, it's one of our own. That's a good way to remember it. Margo, Andrae, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Right.